The last hope. The wind howled outside Amara's small apartment, rattling the window panes like they were ready to give up just as she felt she had. Winter had come early this year to her village in Moldova, blanketing the gray streets in silence. She stared at the flickering candle on the windowsill, its flame a fragile thing, like the last thread of hope she held onto. At 42, Amara had outlived many of her dreams. Her mother had passed 5 winters ago. Her father had left when she was just a girl. And the only man she had ever truly loved had married someone younger, richer, and far more ambitious. Now, she worked long hours cleaning the local school, her back aching by dusk and her heart even more so. But one evening, while sipping her weak tea, she stumbled across something online, a mail-order bride agency. The website was sleek, promising a chance to meet men from across the ocean who were searching for loyal, loving women. Amara scoffed at first. Too old, she thought. Too plain. Who would want me? Still, something inside her stirred. Maybe it was the quiet desperation, or the silent ache in her chest that hadn't gone away in years. Maybe it was the need to be seen again, not as an aging woman, but as someone still capable of love. She filled out the form with trembling fingers. Name, age, height, interests, hobbies, hopes. She didn't sugarcoat anything. Her photos were honest. No filters, no forced smiles. Just her in her kitchen, her garden, the village square. A week passed. Then another. Until finally, a notification. You have a message. A man named Gregory from Arizona had contacted her. He was 51, a successful businessman, divorced, and interested in meeting a mature, kind-hearted woman. Amara's heart fluttered. They exchanged a few emails. Then they agreed to a video call. She wore her favorite blue sweater, brushed her hair, even dabbed a little lipstick on. But the moment Gregory's face appeared on the screen, Amara knew something was wrong. He looked disappointed, his smile stiff, his tone polite but distant. By the end of the call, he gave her a tight smile. You seem sweet, Amara. But I'm really looking for someone a little younger. Best of luck to you. Click. The screen went black. The next day, her profile was quietly removed from the agency's listings. No explanation. Just gone. Amara didn't cry. She just sat there for a long time, staring at her reflection in the dark laptop screen. Her face looked tired. Her eyes even more so. This was foolish, she whispered to herself. A woman like me doesn't get love stories. She closed the laptop and turned away. Outside, the snow fell steadily, covering the world in white. And Amara, in the silence of her empty apartment, wrapped herself in a blanket, not just from the cold, but from the sharp sting of rejection. But what she didn't know was that far across the ocean, a man named Daniel had seen her profile, just moments before it vanished. And he hadn't looked away. The silent message. A week passed since the call that left Amara hollow. Each morning she moved through her routine like a ghost, making tea, layering up for work, sweeping the school halls, and returning home to a silence that wrapped around her like a shroud. She didn't open the laptop again. What was the point? But one evening, as snow drifted past her window like ash from a dying fire, a soft ping echoed from her inbox. She ignored it at first, assuming it was some spam or promotion. But it came again, persistent, gentle, like a knock on a door barely held shut. Curiosity tugged at her. She opened the laptop and clicked. It was a message. A private one. Not from the agency. Subject: I hope it's okay that I reached out. The sender's name was Daniel Carter. Hello, Amara. I don't know if you remember me. We've never spoken. I saw your profile on the agency site, only once, and then it vanished before I could contact you. I reached out to them, but they said you were no longer listed. I know this is unusual, but something about your words, your eyes in those photos, it stayed with me. You looked real. And I don't know how else to say this, but I wanted to know you. Amara stared at the screen. Her hands hovered above the keyboard, unsure whether to close the window or reply. Daniel's profile was attached to the message. He was 47, from Oregon. A widower. Former literature teacher turned bookstore owner. His eyes, deep-set and thoughtful, had a kindness that felt unfamiliar, even in digital form. Against her better judgment, she replied. Dear Daniel, thank you for your message. I am surprised, and to be honest, a bit unsure. I didn't expect anyone to write, especially not after my experience. But I appreciate your words. I don't know what you saw in me, but I'm grateful. I'm just tired. I hope you understand. She hit send, then immediately regretted it. Too blunt. Too broken. But the reply came faster than she expected. I do understand, Daniel wrote. Tired is a language I speak fluently. After my wife passed, I thought my story had ended. But I've come to believe that sometimes the best chapters come after the ones we thought were final. Their messages grew longer. What began as guarded replies turned into shared stories. Daniel spoke of his wife, Eliza, who died of cancer 3 years ago. How their last months together were both the most painful and the most profound. Amara shared her own quiet griefs. The loneliness of small-town life, the sting of judgment, the feeling of time slipping by with nothing to hold on to. She confessed her mail-order bride application wasn't for glamour or wealth, it was for the chance to be seen. Daniel didn't flinch. He didn't pity her. He listened. Truly listened. One night, she asked, "Why me, Daniel? You could have found someone younger. Someone prettier." His answer came with no hesitation. Because your eyes told a story no 20-year-old ever could. Because love isn't about fresh beginnings. Sometimes, it's about finding someone who's weathered storms and still dares to hope for sunlight. Amara felt a warmth rise in her chest. A feeling she hadn't known in years. Hope. Fragile, flickering, but undeniably there. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't dread what tomorrow might bring. Meeting at the edge of winter. The train station was quiet, blanketed in the hush of late January snow. Thick clouds hung low in the sky, casting the world in soft gray light. Amara stood on the platform in her red scarf and wool coat, her breath misting the air as she clutched a small thermos of tea in gloved hands. She was early, nervous, and cold, but mostly nervous. She hadn't seen Daniel face to face yet. Their conversations had moved from email to voice calls, and finally to video chats. But seeing a man on a screen was nothing like standing before him in the flesh. A part of her still wondered, what if he changes his mind? What if I disappoint him like before? But when the train arrived and the doors hissed open, she forgot her fears for a moment. Daniel stepped out, a tall, broad-shouldered figure wrapped in a navy coat. He looked around, slightly disoriented, until his eyes found hers. And then he smiled. Not a polite smile. Not a forced one. It was the kind of smile that said, "There you are. I've been waiting for you." Amara's heart stuttered. She didn't move at first. Couldn't. But Daniel walked straight to her, stopped just a few feet away, and removed his gloves. "Hi," he said softly, eyes shining. "Hi," she replied, barely above a whisper. He looked at her, truly looked, like she was a painting he'd been studying for years and had finally come to life. "You're exactly as I imagined," he said. She laughed nervously. "You mean older and colder?" "No," he said firmly. "I mean beautiful. And real." They walked back to her apartment through snow-dusted streets, their footsteps crunching side by side. Conversation came easily, as it always had. But now, with every glance, every small smile, something unspoken hummed between them. The tension of two people trying not to fall too fast, but unable to stop it even if they tried. Over the next few days, Amara showed Daniel her world, the modest school where she worked, the bakery that sold the best black bread, the icy lake where she used to skate as a child. He met her neighbors, who whispered curiously but kindly. At night, they cooked together in her tiny kitchen. He read to her from his favorite books. She taught him the names of stars in her language. One evening, as they sipped tea by candlelight during a brief power outage, Daniel reached for her hand across the table. "I don't want to leave without asking you something," he said. She looked at him, heart pounding. "I didn't come here for a vacation. I didn't come to test the waters. I came because I think you might be the rest of my story." Amara swallowed, her throat tight. "I know it's fast," he said. "And I don't want to rush you. But this, what we have, it's rare. You feel like home to me. And I don't want to walk away from that." She said nothing for a long moment. Then, with a trembling voice, she asked, "What exactly are you asking, Daniel?" He stood up slowly, walked around the table, and knelt beside her chair, not with a ring, not with grand fanfare, but with sincerity burning in his gaze. "I'm asking if you'll come with me. Not as a mail-order bride. Not as a stranger filling a gap. But as my partner. My equal. The woman I want to love for the rest of my life." Tears welled in Amara's eyes. She reached out and touched his cheek. "You're mad," she whispered. "Completely," he smiled. She laughed through her tears. Then nodded. "Yes," she said. "But only if we walk into that madness together." Outside, the snow continued to fall. But inside that little apartment, two hearts thawed in the quiet warmth of something new, something whole. Love without conditions. 3 months later, Amara stepped off the plane into a crisp Oregon spring. The air smelled of pine and rain, and the clouds drifted lazily across a soft blue sky. Daniel was waiting at the terminal with flowers in hand, not the flashy kind, just simple daisies and lavender, her favorites from the stories she had told him. There was no parade, no banners. Just him, arms wide open, eyes full of light. "Welcome home," he whispered as he held her. And somehow, it did feel like home. Daniel's house stood at the edge of a sleepy town, tucked between a ridge of trees and a small bookstore he had owned for nearly 2 decades. The house was warm, filled with books, soft lighting, and quiet corners that felt like they'd been waiting for her all along. Amara unpacked slowly, carefully, as if nesting in a life that had once felt like someone else's dream. It wasn't easy at first. She missed the familiar smells of her village, the language, the rhythm of old routines. She was older, starting anew in a world that moved faster than her. But Daniel never pushed. He gave her space to breathe, to stumble, to cry. And every night, he made sure to sit beside her with tea in hand, just like she liked it, strong, no sugar. One afternoon, as they rearranged the front room of the bookstore together, a young customer asked, "Is this your wife?" Daniel smiled, looking at Amara with a tenderness that stopped her breath. "She's the reason this place still has light," he replied. "Yes. She's my wife." They hadn't had a grand wedding. Just a small backyard ceremony under an old apple tree, with a few close friends and a local officiant. Daniel had placed a delicate gold band on her finger, one that once belonged to his grandmother. "You don't need a diamond to prove anything," he'd whispered. "You're already the rarest thing I've ever found." Amara cried then, not because of the words, but because for the first time in her life, someone had loved her without wanting to change her. Without comparing her. Without conditions. She was no longer a profile to be judged, or a name to be discarded because of a number. She was a woman seen, heard, cherished. The seasons changed. Summer brought laughter in the garden, long walks through pine trails, and lazy evenings on the porch. Autumn brought falling leaves and slow dances in the living room to old records. Winter returned, but it no longer felt like something to survive. One night, as snow dusted the windows and fire crackled in the hearth, Daniel turned to her and said, "Do you ever wonder how we found each other?" Amara looked at him, smiling softly. "We didn't find each other, Daniel. We chose each other. That's what makes it real." He pulled her close, resting his head against hers. "You saved me." "No," she whispered. "We saved each other." And there, wrapped in warmth and the comfort of arms that held her not as a possession, but as a partner, Amara finally understood. True love doesn't come packaged in perfection. It comes quietly, tenderly, in the heart of someone who sees past your years, your scars, your fears, and chooses you anyway. Not once, but every single day.